You're watching the Bloomberg Law Bankruptcy Review. I'm Pacchia. I'm joined now, as always, by Bloomberg News bankruptcy columnist Bill Rochelle. Be sure to go read his daily bankruptcy column. It's available on BloombergLaw.com, and it's also on the Bloomberg Terminal. Interesting updates on two major cases of old American companies, Eastman, Kodak, and American Airlines. Bill, let's lead off with Kodak. It's percolating through the market that Kodak can't sell its IP assets, and I noticed earlier today that the bonds are just getting killed. Is it just uncertainty over where this Chapter 11 case is going that made bonds fall out of bed? Is that the correct way to look at this?
Well, that's a very good word. I like that, uncertainty. That's the word you can use when you're not sure, I guess. Yeah, the story on the bonds is really pretty god-awful. The bonds that I follow were trading at 26 cents on the dollar in early August. That was when there was great hope out there that the company was going to be able to sell its intellectual technology for what some people thought would be as much as $2.5 billion. Mm-hmm. Well, first in August, they announced that, sorry, we're not going to be able to sell it so quick as we thought. And then finally, in September, they announced that, well, guess what? We're just not going to go through the sale process right now. The prices being offered evidently were not sufficient, and that's killed the bonds. The bonds on the 17th of September traded for 11 cents on the dollar. And Lee, that is a 58% decline in the bonds just since early August. And even more recently, it's a 15 or 16% decline just on the day following the announcement that they were not going to go ahead and auction. So obviously the market is taking this as some pretty bad news. I mean, let's compare with where it was when the case began. There were some folks, smart folks, who thought that this was a strategic bankruptcy, that they didn't have to go bankrupt, that they went in Chapter 11 because they'd be better able to marshal the value of the assets and therefore preserve a lot of value for shareholders. Well, as you can see by these bond prices at below 20 cents, or actually down close to 10 cents, that's not proving itself to be the case today, and I suppose all because they haven't been able to pull off what Nortel did. You'll remember back a year or so ago, Nortel put its intellectual property on the market. The opening bid was $500,000 or $500 million, and it went for 9 times that much. This is really quite a disappointment, and I wonder whether it's more a story about Kodak or actually a story about how intellectual property is not so valuable right now as it was a year ago.
And also turning to American Airlines, Bill, we have layoffs. The pilots union is pretty unhappy with the deal that they have on the table facing them. The debtor seems to be getting its way, at least from a litigation standpoint. It seems to be getting its way through this Chapter 11 case. Everything seems to be coming up roses for them. Is that a proper way to look at what's happening with American?
Well, you're exactly right. The company is getting what they want from the court and so far from their creditors. But a judge does not have the power to command cooperation from employees. And the pilots in particular are pretty upset. The bankruptcy court shoved a new contract down their throat with concessions of 20%. The other 8 unions all negotiated contracts where their concessions were only 17%. And what we have seen since the end of last week, when the AMR folks started instituting this new contract with concessions, is that American Airlines turned up with the worst on-time record in the industry. And more than that, they had to announce that they were cutting their schedule by 2% for lack of pilots and other things such as this. Now, the union has denied that there is any job action going on, but frankly, you know, pretty much every story you read about American and its labor is that the situation is toxic between management and workers, especially the pilots. And there just is no ability for a bankruptcy judge to fix that. I got to say, however, that it's not going to be that way forever, at least I hope. Look at a company like Continental Airlines. It went through bankruptcy twice, and cabin service on Continental was quite excellent. Their workers would knock themselves out. So it just doesn't have to be that because you bang your employees once, even twice, that you're going to have toxic relationship forever, and that they will, the employees that is, will interfere with your ability to run your business for the comfort of passengers.
Bill, that brings up a really interesting point. The Continental Airlines bankruptcies were a couple of years ago. What was the labor management dynamic in those Chapter 11 cases? Was it as toxic as it is today in the American Airlines case?
Well, you know, whenever you're living through it at the time, it always seems like it's the worst that it ever was. I got to tell you, when Continental went back the second time, the workers were not happy campers, because it was twice they were between a rock and a hard place. And you also got to remember, it's been nothing except downhill for the airline industry since deregulation in 1979. It used to be that airline pilots were some of the most highly paid people in the world. And not only were they highly paid, they didn't have to work terribly much, at least compared to what you and I do.
They just carry enormous responsibility.
That is exactly right. And I got to tell you, I don't mind however much I have to pay a ticket to have gray hair up in the cockpit.
Right.
It kind of unnerves me a little bit.
You want to get there.
When I see people who look like they're fresh out of college. But, such is life. Industries change, and they have to adapt to a new economic reality. And that means, sad to say, lower salaries all the way around.
All right, there you have it. 2 developments in 2 major Chapter 11 cases. That's what we have for this week. If you'd like to learn more about the cases and issues we just ran through, be sure to go read Bill's column. It's available on BloombergLaw.com, and it's also on the Bloomberg Terminal. I'm Pacchia. Thanks for watching.